Thank you so much for joining today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Marissa Feinberg. I am PR and brand director of Nushama. I'm also founder of a group called Psychedelics for Climate Action. And that is actually how I came across the work of Bennett Zellner and the Connected Leadership Program and his amazing colleagues that you're going to meet here today. So I'm really excited about this work. This is the first study of its kind regarding leadership, creativity, decision making, and psychedelics. It is groundbreaking work. It is a wonderful opportunity. And that's why we wanted to share it with these two different communities. So we have most people here from Nushama, which is on a mission to humanize medicine. And so Nushama does ketamine assisted therapy, has a psychedelic therapy framework, and essentially gives tools for integration. Integration is one of the most important pieces of the psychedelic experience. We go somewhere, we have an experience, we get new ideas, we're inspired. How do we integrate that into our lives? And then with this connected leadership program, how do we integrate it into business and decision making? How do we have the tools to do that? So one small piece of that is actually the psychedelic medicine. But the largest piece is the coaching and the integration. And we're going to talk about that today because we have world-class coaches here with us, Carrie and Luther, who you're going to meet. We have Bennett doing amazing, cutting-edge, unprecedented research. And you're going to get a chance to ask questions, to learn about this program, to see if it's right for you. So I'm really excited to introduce them. They have a lot of experience embodying the very thing we're looking to support, having fluid, connective, deeper ways of working with a team and being in the world, of having and fostering leadership that unleashes creativity, wisdom, and possibility. And they have experience guiding people through expanded states, deep states, which is an accelerated developmental experience. So you can be part of this incredible group that they're getting together for high performing, intentional leadership. It's starting very soon. It's an incredible group. Definitely if we look at different ways that we need to lead and move forward in the world, psychedelics are the future. And this group is a pioneer and you can be part of this. So I'd like each of you to first introduce yourself. Bennett, tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Marissa, and thanks for putting this event together. I really appreciate it. My name is Bennett Zellner. I'm a professor at the University of Maryland at the Smith School of Business. So I'm technically a business economist, but my focus is different from that of most economists. My focus is on regenerative economics, and regenerative economics focuses on the application of nature's principles and patterns to socioeconomic systems. So my work in regenerative economics has two main areas. One area, I work with a number of organizations in the psychedelic field that are interested in developing regenerative economic approaches to delivering care. And then the second part of it is the research project that I'll have a chance to talk a bit more about today, the Connected Leadership Project. So again, we'll have lots more time. I'll also just note, though I teach at the University of Maryland, I live in New York City. So I see we have lots of folks representing New York here. So I'm coming to you from Brooklyn. So with that, I'll pass it along.
Great. Next, you're going to Carrie Radcliffe.
Thanks, Marissa. So I'm coming to you from the Bay Area. So I get the other side of the country represented. Great to see a couple folks from our area. I'm just outside of San Francisco, but I'm from the Midwest. I grew up near Michigan. I'm an executive coach. I've been working for about 21 years. My primary focus is working with creative leaders. I also work with high potential and female leaders. I got my legs in the business world through Accenture. And early on, I did a hard deep dive in learning about strategy. And I really took sort of got soaked in business acumen and learned that really we could have the best strategy or the best systems change model, but without strong leaders, it just didn't change organizations. And so I pivoted, and as we say these days, and started to look into what adult development was needed to help organizations thrive and be better places to work and to change the world. I think two other things I'd love for you to know is that I was a literature major. So I came from completely the opposite end. I teach poetry classes these days, but I'm also a longtime Zen student. So, like the Nushama folks, I have had a long time passion around consciousness raising, and in particular, the kind of healing that's required in order to move our world forward. Yeah, thanks, Marissa.
Beautiful. Thank you for being with us.
Mhm.
Next, welcome Luther Kitahata.
Thank you, Marissa. I am really excited to be here with this group of leaders and explorers. I'm Luther Kitahata. I'm an executive leadership coach. Much of my career was in high tech, where I was a C-level exec for more than 20 years. And I'm also somewhat of an entrepreneur. I've done 8 startups. For those of you that might remember, I was part of the founding team of TiVo. On a personal side, I just want to say that I've always been really fascinated by what makes people tick. So my entire life, I've done personal development and growth, studied neuroscience, whether it was going to meditation retreats and eventually teaching meditation, or working with different methodologies for working with our psychologies, things like that. And then about 12 years ago, I combined my personal passion with my own executive experience. And now I'm doing executive leadership coaching and team development for high-level execs, entrepreneurs, board members, and their teams.
Wonderful. All right, so now we're going to start the conversation about the program. So Bennett, I understand there was a pilot. Tell us more, what inspired this pioneering connected leadership study and program?
Thanks, Marissa. Happy to share more about that. So I mentioned previously that, so I'll just talk about my personal inspiration. And I just want to note up front that I'm one of the 2 principal investigators of this study. The other one is Rochelle Sampson, who's a colleague of mine at the University of Maryland, and who, under any other circumstances, would have been here today. But she's on vacation with her family in Rome, celebrating her husband's 60th birthday. So we did not want to pull her away. But this is we are 100% equals in this work. So I'm going to talk about my inspiration. Her inspiration is related, but her words would be a bit different, of course. For me. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a business economist. I started off my career as a more traditional business school economist, and I was very disenchanted. I felt very disconnected from my work. And at some point, I would say a little bit over 10 years ago, I really got in touch with the knowing, which I think I already had, but it's difficult to surface, that our economic system is extremely dysfunctional. And once I was able to kind of surface this knowing, it meant sort of questioning my identity and the role that I wanted to play in the world. And basically where I ended up was I wanted to continue in my job as a business econ professor, but I wanted to focus on systems change. And the specific impetus for this study, I mentioned earlier that I became very interested in regenerative economics and have been working in that area. I've been consulting in that area, and I know that has an impact, and I feel good about that. But a number of years ago, I asked myself the question, how could I have the broadest possible impact? And for many reasons, it became clear to me that the way I could have the broadest impact would be by working with leaders, in the hope that they too might shift the way that they oriented to the world, and that this could lead to changes in their decision making behavior as well. And so that was the initial impetus for getting involved and developing the connected leadership study, which again we can talk more about. But
Wonderful. And Carrie and Luther, how did you get involved, and what was the impetus for you?
Luther, why don't I go next? We'll get to hear a little bit more about what the project is. But first, what I want to say is when Bennett and Rochelle came to us and said, hey, we want to work with executives and psychedelics and see what happens in a safe, research-contained environment, my heart leapt, because there is an opportunity. We're just beginning in the world to be able to talk about healing as a normal, necessary way of being for human beings. But here we are all coming together as traumatized bodies and pretending like we're fine. So, the Nushama, the work you're doing is also so important in all sectors. So it's both Luther and I have done our own personal and then other professional work in looking at what psychedelics can do for healing and development. But really, psychedelics starts to accelerate a process of depth and deepening. And in that, I got really curious about the potential for leaders who have an outsized influence in the world in a safe environment with research, with coaches who can support integration. And so from there, I was hooked. And we've only been just creatively developing since. So I'll stop there to give Luther a chance to say, oh, it's Nushama. Thank you. Yeah, Luther, I'll hand it to you to see what you would add.
All right, thanks, Carrie. Yeah, so first of all, it's back to this is the first study and program of its kind in the world. I mean, there's been so much great work with psychedelics with people who have mental health issues, you know, at Nushama and other places, such as PTSD, anxiety, depression. This program is designed for leadership transformation as opposed to alleviating mental health issues. Both important, but it's the first of its kind. Second, in my 12 years of working as an executive coach, the biggest changes I've seen are when leaders combine two things. One is developing their skills for the job, so improving their communication, their leadership presence, or working on their strategy and vision. With the second thing, which is the deeper internal development, you know, working with their blind spots and habits, or even unconscious patterns, things that get in the way of them getting to the next level. That's when I see not just change, but transformation. And as Carrie said, the opportunity with psychedelics is to take this deeper, you know, and work further and deeper and faster. So this could unlock creativity, making new connections, going beyond your limited mindsets, and really accelerate the process of transformation. So this, you know, it's the first, it's history in the making. And as an entrepreneur, I love being part of that early adopter set. And I really want to be part of making history rather than reading it.
Beautiful. That's very inspiring, Luther. So before we continue to jump into the conversation, I just want to say a couple things that I meant to share earlier. Your questions are so important to us. We really want to know what you want to know. So the way that this is going to work is we're going to ask a series of guided questions to the panelists, but we also want to collect your questions. So you're going to have different questions throughout. Pop them in the chat. We'll get to them. If we don't get to them, we can follow up with you after. We are going to get to questions, but we want every single question to be addressed. And we also want you to have the opportunity to set up a one-on-one consult for more questions that maybe you might be a little shy about, or questions that you might think of later. So we want to give you the opportunity to go deeper with each, with Bennett, with Carrie, who are going to be setting up some one-on-one sessions to better determine if this is right for you. And so there's a link where you can sign up for a one-on-one consult. I'm going to pop it in the chat, but please also pop your questions in the chat, and we'll do the first half with our guided questions and the second half with yours. So let's pop into our first guided question. So why psychedelics for creativity and leadership, and why psilocybin? You know, what is the science behind psychedelics for creativity, leadership, and decision making?
I'll take that one. Yeah, so I guess the first thing I want to emphasize is that the science, this is really on the cutting edge of where science is right now. There's been a huge resurgence of research on psychedelics during the past 20 years, and really during the past decade in particular. The vast majority of this has been in clinical research, and the results have been amazing, and we should keep on doing clinical research. And there's also an opportunity to now start doing additional research for, you know, just to put it kind of, you know, scientifically non-clinical applications, right? So let me tell you, let me start by giving a little bit about what we know about the neurobiology of psychedelics, and then how this, how we think this might translate into decision-making by leaders. One of the primary findings on the effects of, and this is talking about psilocybin in particular, psilocybin on the brain, is that it reduces the activity of a functional network in your brain known as the default mode network. The default mode network is this set of structures in your brain that are active when you're not focused on a particular task, when you're thinking about the future, maybe reflecting on the past. It's often thought of as the network in the brain where where your sense of self resides, your narrative sense of self. So you might associate it with the ego. Okay. So psychedelics tamp down on the activity of this functional network, the default mode network, and that may be responsible for the common or the frequent experience that people have of ego dissolution, or at least a softening of the ego. At the same time, it's also been found, again, and this is all using neural imaging studies, so we can see this. It's also been found that psychedelics, psilocybin in particular, increase communications among parts of the brain that typically don't communicate as much. Okay, so we have reduced activity of the default mode network, increased connectivity among parts of the brain that aren't normally communicating as much. What are some of the implications? One is this might give rise to an increase in what we refer to as synthetic thinking. So synthetic thinking is when you start making connections among problems or areas that you previously did not recognize were connected. So we can imagine that synthetic thinking is crucial for generating sudden insights, novel connections, and potentially leading to significant breakthroughs by moving beyond kind of isolated concepts to more holistic kind of systemic solutions sort of thinking. Secondly, by tamping down on the default mode network and kind of the ego structure, if you will, psychedelics have also been linked to increased openness. So there are actual studies showing that people who take psilocybin have higher openness scores according to measures used in psychology. When you're more open, you're potentially more flexible cognitively. This gives rise to greater imagination, to greater intellectual curiosity, and more broadly, we might expect greater openness to foster a mindset that's conducive to scientific and artistic creativity. So those are the first two, and the third and final potential effect I want to come to is psychological connectedness. So clinical research on psilocybin has shown that one of the primary channels through which psilocybin experiences lead to improvements in well-being and reductions in clinical symptoms such as depression is by helping people reconnect to themselves, to others, and to the wider world. So one of the questions that we're asking in this study is, do these personal experiences of reconnection lead to professional transformation? Is it possible that by feeling more connected, not just to oneself, but again, to others and to the wider world, that decision makers might start taking into account different or wider sets of stakeholders, or perhaps they might start to have a longer time horizon for their decisions? So that was a little bit long, but I thought it was important to give kind of a well-rounded answer about the science.
Right. And when we look back to the impetus for the project, and when I first heard you speak, it was about the pilot project you conducted. So will you tell us a little bit about that and any transformational stories that came out of that?
Yeah, for sure. And I should just note, yeah, let me say that I will talk about that. Let me just spend a few seconds explaining kind of the setup, because people may not be familiar with it. So these are cohorts of leaders who are participating in a psilocybin retreat in a professionally guided setting. And in the pilot cohort, we had 15 participants. The substance used, as you might have already inferred from my previous comments, is psilocybin. And in the pilot cohort, we had 2 dosing sessions. The participants had some choice in how much they wanted to consume, but the first dosing session was the equivalent of about 2.5, up to about 2.5 grams of mushrooms, and the second was the equivalent of up to about 5 grams of mushrooms. And most participants went for the maximum dose in both sessions. All right, so the participants, about 75% of them had never had psychedelic experiences. Most of the participants were between the ages of 35 and 55. And they came from all over the world. They were in roles such as CEO, founder CEO, partner, division head, et cetera. And they had decision-making authority over a wide range of domains: team direction, strategy development, capital allocation, marketing, R&D, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so in terms of initial insights, we found that the participants exhibited sustained increases in psychological connectedness to themselves, others, in the wider world, and that this increase in connectedness was greater when the psychedelic experience had been more profound, if you will, when it was a more spiritually intense experience. And this connectedness we showed up in decision-making in a number of different ways. I'll just give you a couple of anecdotes. If we have time, I'll read a quote or two. I don't know if we'll have time for that. But in terms of anecdotes, we had a wide range. But on one end of the spectrum, we had a CEO founder step down from the organization they had founded to pursue a new direction that they felt was more in service of others. We had another serial entrepreneur who had recently founded a new organization who afterwards went and restructured the financing and governance structures of the organization to center purpose and shield the organization from financial pressures that might have, in some cases, kind of come into conflict with the purpose of this organization. We had other participants who developed an increased ability to work with diverse others and made different choices in the business partners that they chose. Should I share quotes, or I don't know what?
Sure. I mean, I think that the personal transformations that people experience are some of the most inspiring things for people to hear.
All right. Well, so let me share this one. So this is from a CEO founder. I'll read this. So there's another level of connectivity, world consciousness, planet consciousness, whatever you call it, where you think less about self and others and more about what's needed, but getting into the wider connectivity that joins all of us up. Psychedelic experience just opens the door for you. Once you've savored that and you've put a decision through that filter, you know which way to go. So it gives you an inner knowing that you can't do with logic alone, and that has masses of value, masses of value. So there's one, and I think this really speaks to this idea of connectedness to the wider world and how that might influence decision making. And I'll just read one more. In my work, there's a typical profile of a person that really gets under my skin, speaks loudly, interrupts people, very type A. Before, I would just be so annoyed with this type. I'm about to embark on a new partnership, and one of the potential partners is that type of personality, and it doesn't really get under my skin anymore. I see it. I'm annoyed by it, but it doesn't affect me as much as it used to, and I'm able to see the positives that can bring, etc. So there's a little bit more, but I'm just gonna stop there. So I think what this quote speaks to is this increased ability to work with diverse others, and which one could imagine would lead to a whole range of new collaborative possibilities that might not have existed before. So I think that's probably a good place to stop for now, rather.
Wonderful, very inspiring. Thank you. So what is special about the combination of psychedelics and coaching that makes this study unique and groundbreaking?
Well, I'll start with this, and Carrie can jump in whenever she feels like she has something to offer as well. So Carrie and I coach at multiple levels, and we are particularly good at the deeper levels. One of the types of coaching we employ is really good at integrating deeply expanded states of awareness. Now, these deeply expanded states can be created by the coaching itself. It also can be created by meditation and breath work, etc. And we do that. But psychedelics, as I said earlier, it can really take that potentially further and deeper and faster. So what I see as the unique part of this is the psychedelics enhance the leadership transformation we're working with people on, and the coaching enhances the integration of the psychedelic experience. And that's what I see as unique and groundbreaking. Carrie, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I love that. All I would add is that we don't develop alone in a vacuum. We develop in relationship to others. And so one of the things that caught my attention about the pilot that Rochelle and Bennett did was that their original participants didn't have the support after the psychedelic experience. And so part of what coaching does is create that mirroring and that coupling to help support integration that happens, as you can imagine, First, there's immediate integration, but then there's midterm and long term. And especially when you're bringing in transformational thinking, the kind of openness and creativity that Bennett was talking about back into your life, back into your world. It requires more than just yourself. It requires more than willpower. There's a real connectivity that's necessary. And so this is where the coaching comes in, but this is also where the other participants can be of such great value. So going through an experience like this together, I've been a part of a lot of leadership development, and we try and we do it well, but it's a slow iteration to create a long-term experience that invites people into deep states together. However, it's great when a company does it for their whole population. But what about people who aren't part of an organization? How do you get like-minded, like-hearted people at the same level, thinking the same kind of high-level thoughts and strategies about how to change the world, how to change themselves together? And I think this project does that and creates a supportive cohort and group to go through it so that long beyond the project, people have one another to continue to grow and support and deepen.
Beautiful. And that's a great segue into our next question, which is, how might psychedelic experiences give rise to a positive societal impact?
That's a great question. And of course, my answer is purely speculative. But I will share with you some thoughts. I think there's a growing awareness today that we need major changes in our systems if humanity is to survive. And there's lots of talk about what sorts of policies might be adopted, what sorts of prescriptions might be adopted, and that's great, and that should go on. And I also don't think that's enough unless we make changes in here. I think if we actually want to see true systems change, it starts with internal change. So the way that I often think about this is in terms of our attunement. And our attunement is the way that we orient to the world. And the prevailing attunement of our culture is characterized by disconnection. We tend to view people, organizations, things, is these kind of discrete, disconnected parts. And we often neglect the connections among them and the systemic consequences of our actions. One potential effect of psychedelic experiences, building on what I was saying before about the ability of psychedelics to help people reconnect, one potential effect is to help people shift to a more connected attunement, a way of orienting to the world in which they recognize the intrinsic interconnectedness of all things and the mutuality of the relationships supporting life. The example and I think this is a very natural way of being. So the example I sometimes use, if we think about the human body is a complex system. It has lots of different parts. There's a heart, there's lots of different organs, hands, feet, etc. The heart pumps blood to all of the other organs. It's not doing it just to be nice. It's doing it because by providing resources to the other organs, blood is a critical resource, the heart is supporting the health of the entire system. And so I think that's an example of, that's kind of a real world example of this life-supporting connected attunement. And I think that psychedelic experiences have the potential to help people reawaken to that attunement, and then that in turn can give rise to the systems change that might ultimately help us survive. So.
Wonderful. So what are some other benefits when someone participates in your program and they emerge as a more connected leader? What are some of the benefits of that? Anything else?
I'll jump in. I'll just say, what you would hope, obviously this is a study and we'll see, but what you would hope is that there's more creativity and ability to connect more dots. And does that lead to what Bennett was talking about, a more socially conscious leadership, or seeing the bigger picture, or having a wider sense of care? The thing that I often find with companies that are for profit, even nonprofit, but for profit, is they're focused on the profits as the primary thing. But I've also found that the alignment with having positive impact on people, the environment, and the world, there's actually alignment there. That can actually hit the bottom line as much as anything else. And so whilst people talk about that as something being against each other, that it's contradictory, I actually see that it's in alignment. And I think this potentially allows more people to see that better.
Yeah, and I might add just a small piece to this, which is that most of us are familiar with what Luther and I call horizontal development, right? Characteristic of this is building new skills. I was a competitive runner in college, getting faster, improving, winning. And currently the constructs of our culture are really set up to reinforce this over and over and over and over again. And by the time that you're a leader, and if you're coming to someone like Luther and I are interested in a project like this, your question isn't really about how can I get better at one thing. I mean, we are like a hack-friendly place. Really, the question is one of way of being. How do I begin to shift my way of being in the world? How can I let go of old patterns or old ways of seeing things that have me constrict or come from a place of fear or doubt? And this is where Luther and I have always worked, and we call it vertical development. And vertical means turning toward depth. And so part of what we've discovered with psychedelics is that our depth ontology in the way that we work with clients is effective and rich and meaningful, but it takes time. Psychedelics accelerates the ability to drop into a deep place, and coaching or community support helps to shore that up and integrate it in a way that it's a place you can visit and deepen into regularly, that it becomes a constant. I just want to name for everyone, you're in ketamine, there is no there. What there is more expanded capacity to be in life, an ability to have access to more resources of ourselves, more wisdom, more creativity, the comfort to be in discomfort. And so this is what I think comes from a project like this. To walk away and to have that access to yourself as a leader, and to be able to facilitate and cultivate it in others and in organizations feels really pivotal given where we are in the world.
Beautiful, thank you. And as someone who's hearing this and who comes from the environmental social impact space and who has gotten to know you a bit, I just want to emphasize for the audience from what I've learned is that, while someone like myself, I've worked in environmental social impact for 20 years, I still see value in this opportunity to deepen. Like you were talking about, we can all go deeper with our knowledge, with our leadership, with our creativity. We can also continue to evolve with the times, right? We're in an ever-changing, evolving world. And so regardless of your experience and where you're at, there's a lot of really rich opportunity here. So let's go into next. We're almost at the end of our prompt questions, and then we're going to address some of your questions, which I see a lot of really great questions pouring in. So
Good.
Continue to put your questions in the chat. So what will the experience be like? Like we've talked a lot about the benefits, the vision, what will the actual experience like from when preparation starts on Zoom to a person's arrival in the Netherlands to post-retreat integration?
Yeah, why don't I start that? And gentlemen, please back me up if I miss something here. But let's say you sign up tomorrow, woohoo, you'll immediately get some information and all the logistics and what needs to happen next. You'll also hear from me, and we'll set up coaching right away. Our kickoff date is July 11th. But we're looking for participants to get going as soon as possible so that Luther and I can begin working with you. The first 2 coaching sessions happen before the retreat, which is scheduled as an in-person retreat in the Netherlands in the beautiful Dutch countryside, beginning July 21st, and it runs for 6 days. So you'll hear from us. The kickoff is July 11th, and then there's a retreat for 6 days in the Netherlands. We will all participate in that. And, I'm noticing we haven't spoke much about our retreat facilitators, who we are very excited about. And then from the retreat, you'll work with your coaches for 4 more sessions. And that's really focused on integration. After the retreat, we'll also have 2 additional collective sessions where the leaders, all on Zoom, are working together in a connected way on what is unfolding from the psychedelic experience. So let me stop there because I've said a number of things.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Bennett.
Well, I was just going to just add. So first of all, I think it was clear from what Carrie said. The retreat is the 21st to the 26th. Carrie had mentioned that the kickoff is July 11th. That's an online kickoff.
Thank you.
So that's a group session, but it's online. So I think that's important. And then Carrie also mentioned the retreat organization. We're working, so we work with professional retreat organizations to run the retreats. The organization that we're working with is QME, and we were very careful in the way that we selected QME. QME is a deeply experienced retreat provider based in the Netherlands. And for those of you who don't know, this is all fully legal in the Netherlands. Psilocybin truffles are legal there. The retreat takes place in the Dutch countryside at a really lovely retreat center with chefs who cook super healthy plant-based meals that are supportive of the type of experiences we'll be having. There's live music, ceremony music during the ceremonies, along with curated playlists. There's a very high ratio of facilitators to participants, so it's an extremely well-supported journey. And yeah, I guess that the way we came to QME was recommended to us by Dr. Rosalind Watts, who is amazing and very, very trustworthy. She was the lead clinical researcher at the psilocybin trials at Imperial College in London. And QME also has an ongoing partnership with Dr. Gabor Mate. So it's a really, I'm sharing all this with you just to let you know how solid the retreat organization is, and also just to, yeah, how important it is to us to be working with an organization that we trust, because I'm sure that's something that would be important to potential participants as well.
And let me just add one other thing, which is just because we talk a lot about the retreat and people tend to focus on that. Just so you understand, it's a 4-month program. So it's a whole program that includes the group work and the coaching and the retreat and all of that. So that's all actually together. The retreat's the part that's in person and the other parts are virtual.
Right. Yeah. Well said.
And just one more prompt question, and then we're going to get into your questions. Who is this study right for? And does it matter if someone has experience with psychedelics?
So for the study, no, it does not matter if you have experience with psychedelics. As I think I mentioned, for our pilot cohort, 75% of the participants had no prior psychedelic experience. The study is aimed at leaders of for-profit and nonprofit organizations, and leadership, being a leader is defined broadly. It's basically someone with decision-making authority over an area. The area could be decision-making authority over resource allocation, over strategic direction. So that's quite broad.
Great. So let's get into some of your questions. Let's see. Someone says, speaking as a lawyer that represents psychedelic medicine providers, I sometimes see my clients get overwhelmed with the size of the problems in the world.
Mhm.
What are some small positive changes that can come from psychedelic experiences? Relatedly, can these experiences increase resilience when we are leading through long, ongoing problems?
I'll just say something about that. One of the things that Carrie and I work on a lot with leaders and anyone we coach, frankly, is resilience. I think that is one of the things that is really important, and I think the psychedelics are part of potentially accelerating that as well. So part of this broader view and whatnot, it's not just having a broader view and having a wider sense of care. It's also having the ability to hold that. So what we often work on, we're working on things like centering and getting ourselves in a place where we can actually hold more and make our plates bigger, not just make changes and things like that. So I think resilience is a key, and I'm really glad the participant brought that in.
We have another question. I noticed that the majority of focus so far has been on economics, and this came earlier in the presentation, which certainly drives everything. But does this apply to folks who work as leaders in the not-for-profit world?
Yeah, I think I answered that. Absolutely. The program is open to leaders at for-profit and not-profit organizations. And I think the person who asked the question, also made a good point. Economics does drive a lot in this world. That certainly doesn't mean that we don't have interest in people who are leading organizations that are not necessarily focused on profit maximization as their primary goal.
We have another question. How difficult is it to recruit leaders for a study like this? Is fear of visibility a barrier? And do you feel that there's a self-selecting effect where more people who are inclined to live more visibly are naturally more open-minded and open to change?
I love this question. Bennett, I want you to answer, but here are two things I want to add. Yes, it's hard. And the world is changing at the same time. So it's very interesting to notice who's curious and stepping in. Even a year ago, there were people who are like, no, I wouldn't consider it. Doesn't feel safe, doesn't feel. So what's happening in psychedelics is changing the very ground we're standing on. And so I just want to name that we're in this interesting tension, which is what makes the project really special and cutting edge, that it's right on the cusp of what I think is going to be, a tidal wave of new way of being and leading in the world. So I wanted to add that piece in before.
Yeah, and I certainly agree that psychedelics are becoming more mainstream, shall we say? And if somebody wanted to be open about their participation, they could be, but this is all done with the utmost confidentiality. Especially as researchers, we're bound by very strict confidentiality rules. We do not disclose any identifying information about any of the participants, and we even keep the data on a firewalled server at the university. Like, we don't keep it on our personal computers. So there are a lot of safeguards in place, and that's understandably important to a lot of people who are in leadership positions, and we are very, very strongly committed to maintaining confidentiality.
And just so you know, that's something that Carrie and I deal with all the time as well as coaches. So whether it's the group or the one-on-one coaching, all of it is confidential and not shared.
In fact, I would say discretion is probably our number one value as we hold all of our work. And, I can just name, I've never done a webinar around this work before, anything like this. So just to give you a sense of the sensitivity with which we hold it.
Are you seeing any synchronicity in the renewed interest in psychedelics and the changes that are emerging in systems and people as a reaction to the COVID pandemic?
Would you read it one more time?
Yeah, I was gonna.
Yeah.
I think basically,
follow.
I think what it's saying is there's a rise in interest in psychedelics and systems, and has that been sparked by COVID and the pandemic and the recent shifts in 2020? I think that's what the question wants to know.
I can't speak authoritatively. I can say that one way to think about the COVID crisis is the COVID crisis as being one of many interrelated and overlapping crises that are sometimes collectively referred to as the meta crisis or the poly crisis. And I think there's no question that the anxiety produced by the state of meta crisis that we live in, and also the need to find solutions, is definitely, at least from my perspective, led to an increase in kind of modalities for exploring novel solutions, including psychedelics.
Yeah, I might add that before all our orientation of this being a meta crisis, usually most people came to this in the way that Bennett spoke about himself, which was from a being disenchanted in the path that they were on. It's kind of an awakening that happens for us when we see the constructs. But a polycrisis has us all waking up in a new way. Yeah.
So here's a more scientific question. How do you measure positive impact on creativity? And what do you control it against? In other words, what tells you that someone became more creative when it could have happened without the medicine?
So, I mean, I could really get into the weeds on that one. So I'll just give a really high level answer for now. So participants in the study take a battery of psychometric surveys. So these are psychometric survey instruments that are used frequently in psychology research and in clinical studies as well. So we have a range of instruments that they fill out before and after, and at multiple points after the experience itself, and at different points within the program. In addition, we do qualitative interviews with the participants, which we then code using fairly rigorous coding standards. We have some other more novel measurement techniques, which I'd love to talk about here, but I just think it'd be a little bit too deep a dive for here. But it's a great question. It's challenging to measure creativity, and the way we're attempting to address that is with a multi-method approach.
Next question. In thinking about the use of psychedelics with couples that aims to promote shifts that supports the relationships intentionally, what are the considerations of psychedelics with teams in which there are power differential dynamics?
Yeah, this is a beautiful question. Part of the work that Luther and I are in is looking at the unfoldment, this is the language we use, of groups. Because many of us come in with protection and defenses. We are socially defended in order to survive. And yet that very defense tends to limit, splinter, and separate. We're seeing this a lot in our world right now. So a little bit like Bennett, I don't want to get in the weeds of the how, but we have practices in working with people in groups at levels of depth. And as you can imagine, we're really excited to see what's possible when psychedelics accelerate access to depth and we can meet people there where they are. And not only have them have that experience together, but work to integrate and make that. So really integrate, when I keep using the word integrate, integration is how do we bring this very profound, unique experience of ourselves into our daily lives? How do we begin to operate from that place on a regular basis? And so this is the point of the extra collective group sessions, to continue to reinforce, support, and unfold. Luther and I don't come from the school of interpretation where you interpret an experience. Rather, we continue to drop in and have it unfold because we believe that it comes from the human being, from inside, not from outside, so that this capacity lives within us. So I think I would stop there, but really appreciate the question and appreciate the work that the questioner is doing with couples, because this feels really essential.
And I also just want to add one quick practical point. I 100% agree with everything that Carrie just said. In terms of this this program itself, the people who are attending are not coming as large groups from a single organization. In the pilot cohort, we did have 2 participants who came from the same organization who had chosen to do so, but for everybody else came from a different organization, and that's what we anticipate for this upcoming cohort as well. And based on those who are already enrolled in it, nobody is currently from the same organization.
Next question, someone says, Brooklyn, here by way of Nushama, here to learn how psilocybin and coaching/integration can support a female founder building for impact, currently in the agri-tech food space. How are you selecting participants to join the program? Can you speak more about how participants will work with coaches, i.e. how often, and how can participants maximize coaching sessions and the experience overall?
First of all, we'd love to have you. And second, yeah, Bennett, do you want to start with
I'll
selection?
just start about selection for just a second, and then turn it over to you, Carrie. There's an application process, and we can share the information for how to apply with you. You file your application with QME, the retreat provider. The application form asks for basic information about you. There are some questions around your organizational role, kind of whether you meet these very broad leadership criteria, and then a bunch of much more personal questions about your psychological history, your medications and things like that. And we, as the researchers, and this also applies to Carrie and Luther as the coaches, do not see your answers to any of those questions. The only questions we'll see the answers to are the leadership criteria questions. QME screens participants. They're very experienced at doing this. They have a psychiatrist, a medical doctor leading their staff in their screening process. They screen participants, and then if QME approves a participant, we then check out. Then we then assess the leadership criteria, assuming that that also works. Then the participant is accepted into the program, and this all happens very quickly. This entire process can happen within a matter of days. So I think that was responsive.
Yeah. And then what I'll add, I think I remember the gist of the question. I answered some of your questions, but let me just say it again. There are 6 coaching sessions included in the whole of the program, and those coaching sessions are customized and designed for you. In other words, you're bringing in your questions about life, your own developmental journey. We meet you where you are, and we work to create individually one-on-one a program that supports that. So the first 2 sessions we have are really, the first one is for us to hear all of that and to begin to design around it. And the second is to begin, because there's a lot that we can already do before the retreat. Deeply expanded states are available at all times. If you've gone for a long run, a long drive, heck, spinning on a merry-go-round can put you in a deeply expanded state. So there's a way that we can, and in a less cheeky way, practicing meditation and starting to turn toward yourself with this intention of deepening. That's how we would begin, and then hold the through line of your intentions, what you're up to as a leader and what you want to bring to the world after, as our core focus in supporting you and coaching you through the program. Anything you would add to that, Luther?
No, I think that's actually very well said. And I'm just noticing the time as well, so I want to make sure we get
Super,
through.
thanks.
So we're going to do one more prompt, and then we've had some questions also about the cost. So we'll do that question last. There's one more prompt. This is one of your questions from the group. Do you feel that the developmental changes that emerge in leaders are more personal and values-based, or are they more creative with effects on operations, strategies, and business drivers?
Oh, I love that question. I would say yes, yes, and yes. I mean, as Carrie just said, we meet people where they are, but the effects that we see of any of the coaching that we do and the deeply expanded states that we work with often go into all those different areas. It can be very practical in the operations and the runnings of a company. It can also be very personal in terms of the values you have and whether those values are serving you or not. So I would say that it really depends on the individual about where they're putting their intentions and focus, and it can impact all of those areas and probably many more.
So we have some people asking, how much does this cost? So it's not free. It is being offered at cost, inclusive of everything of the flight. And I will tell you what it is inclusive of, and then I will share the number. So, again, like you've been hearing about throughout this chat, this is a program and a study and a retreat and a 4-month integration that is on the cutting edge of psychedelics, creativity, leadership, and decision-making with this exciting experimental approach with world-class researchers and coaches and facilitators. So with the preparation, with the actual 6-day study and program and retreat, in the Netherlands, and then with this 4-month schedule that is going to be arranged around your schedule for follow-up and integration. There will be touch points before the retreat, after the retreat. And so I just can't emphasize, how much is here. This is a bit of a once in a lifetime, and it is a first in a lifetime experience for this study. And it is beautiful in the Dutch countryside. And it includes things like transportation to and from there, from the Amsterdam airport, with wonderful meals to make you feel nourished and supported on this healing journey, with the psilocybin truffles, world-class coaching, experienced facilitators, curated music. In any case, like I said, it is not free. It does cost $10,200. And so we understand that this is an important decision, not just for what is spent, but for you as a person in your leadership and development at this stage in your life and your career and your creativity and the impact that you want to bring to this world. So anyone here who wants to learn more, who wants to go deeper, who wants to have more questions that did not get answered today or that you did not share, everyone will have the opportunity to do a one-on-one consult with Bennett and Carrie, and you will dive deep and you will see if this is right for you. We really want to get the right people in this study. There are limited spots available. And so, is it right for you? Do you still have more questions? Everyone who signed up today will receive an email with an opportunity to schedule a one-on-one consult. And we'll be sending that to you as quickly as possible. So thank you so much for joining today. Thank you so much for your time, your interest. There's a huge opportunity here, and we're just thrilled to have you as they are embarking on finding the right people to participate in this new part of history.
Thank you, Marissa.
Thanks so much, Marissa. That was really great. And also, Marissa, I think you had a form that you wanted to share.
Yes, we do have a form, and I didn't know if everyone was able to receive it. Oh, because
you just changed the setting in the chat.
Here's everyone. I had tried putting it in, and there we go. So here's the form. So you can sign up for a one-on-one consult right now. Yep. But you'll also be getting this by email. Okay.
And I also see, I'll just field one additional question. There's a question about grants and scholarships or partial scholarships. We did have a number available. I think that they are all gone now. There is still one scholarship recipient who has a few days left to respond. So I'm not sure that we will have additional ones left, but if at least for the person who asked the question, if you're interested in applying, please go ahead and apply, fill out the scholarship form. And if there's any possibility that we can make something work for you, and if you meet the criteria, of course, we will certainly do that. Yeah.
I'd just like to say thank you, everyone, for taking your valuable time and studying.
Yeah.
It's very much appreciated.